Welcome to Scaretales. Today's stories are about a ghost plane and 3 stories about the military. The caller is Bob from Alameda, California. Ghost plane. I live on an island. It's called Alameda, and the significance of this will come up later. I'm a commercial pilot, and in January of 1998, I was working on building cross-country hours. I fly small airplanes. I'm still building up my hours to get my certified flight instructor rating. I flew up to Ukiah to visit with my friends, and it was getting late, so I started to fly back about 11:30 at night. As I left the airport area, I was about 3,000 feet, and all of a sudden it got really cold in the cockpit of my little 172 Cessna. So I reached up and closed the vents and put the heater on. It just stayed really cold, but I didn't think much of it. I listened to a station called 960. It's an old 40s station. And all of a sudden, over my headset, I hear, "Check your 6, boy." And I was all by myself in the cockpit. And I didn't even have the communications radio on. So I turned around and looked behind me. "Check your 6 is look at your 6 o'clock position." I turned around and all of a sudden, there's just this kind of glowing green light, and it's getting closer and closer, and I was like, oh my God. It just sounded like some old 40s voice, you know. "Check your 6, boy," is what he said. And I turned around, and this light was getting closer, and so I go to turn and push forward, and the yoke wasn't moving. And these little planes aren't equipped with autopilot, and this thing was not pitching down and not turning or anything. I couldn't change anything. I couldn't move after that. All of a sudden, the lights dimmed in the cockpit, and I'm getting really scared. Then I get fixated on this thing coming up behind me, and as it gets closer, it had probably another 60 or 70 knots on me, and it was creeping up, and it went around on my right side and came up to my 3 o'clock position. A huge flying boat with one of the old Pan Am-type clippers pulled up alongside me. It really scared the heck out of me. I don't tell people about this because they'll think I'm crazy. So this thing pulls up beside me and it's starting to creep in, and I'm really frantically trying to get the stick to move. I look over and all of a sudden, I just see this face in the cockpit window. And this thing is huge, you know. 4 big radial engines. And the guy kind of gives me a wave, and then he turns off and pulls away. Then all of a sudden, it just kind of vanished. Then I could start hearing things again, and I could hear the radio again. So I made it back to Oakland Airport, where I'm based out of, and I landed there. My mom had bought me this book a couple of weeks earlier called Pacific Pioneers, Pan American Story. I was looking through it, and there was one called an M130 Philippine Clipper. It's a Martin flying boat, and it had crashed on January 21st, 1943. It crashed up in the Ukiah area. And I was like, wow, that's really amazing. Maybe that was the same one that I saw. I rode my bike up to the old Naval Air Station in Alameda, and it turned out that Alameda was the base for the Pan American Company for their Pacific flights. I couldn't believe it, but it happened. I asked the ATC on my way in, "Did you see any planes around me on your radar?" And they said no. I didn't really want to press anything. Warren Air Force Base Ghost. This is why I believe in ghosts. For 10 years, I was stationed at Fee Warren Air Force Base, Cheyenne, Wyoming. I was the security policeman. We did the maintenance and security for all of the missiles that were in the missile field. There were thousands of people that have been through this Air Force base, and all of them, I bet, could repeat this story. The story goes, one day a missile maintenance crew was out in the field while they were working on a missile, and a set of arms clamped a man. If you can imagine sticking up your finger in the air and grabbing it with a pair of pliers, that's what these arms are like. So this missile is held in place by these large clamps because it can take a hit from the nuclear missile. So these things are very solid. So while he was working on the missile, for some reason, this clamp activated and pinched the man almost in half. So very quickly then, they made a call back to the base, and as quickly as possible, by helicopter, they flew out a medical crew. The man wasn't doing very well. His blood pressure was beginning to drop. So they asked him, "Is there anything we can do for you, because it doesn't look like you're going to make it?" The man said, "Yes. I'd like to be able to tell my wife one more time that I love her." So they arranged to make a radio call to his wife, and he was able to speak to her one last time. After the phone call finished, they said, "All right, we're going to release this arm from you." The doctor told him, "I don't think I'm going to be able to stop the bleeding, and this may be the end." So he said he was ready, and they released the arm. And as the doctor said, the man died right there on the spot. The place where he died was Missile Silo K-11. As I said, these missile silos can take a direct hit from a nuclear missile. They have a 10-ton concrete door on top of the missile. Right on the outside of a missile, there's nothing but a fence. They don't worry about people getting inside, so all you need is a fence. After this incident happened, the alarm underneath the 10-ton door, inside the missile where it was impossible for anyone to go, would go off almost every single night. The men would have to respond and go out there and check all around the outside of the fence, and then they would have to open the hole and go down where the missile was. So it's thought that he's still there. Caller from Alaska, healed sniper. I was in the United States Marine Corps. I was a sniper, and I went to Grenada. Grenada is a jungle. I got hit in the knee with a bullet, and from my family pictures, it was my great-great-grandfather in a Civil War uniform that sat down and froze my leg. And he said, "Everything will be okay, boy. Everything will be okay." This is the first time I've talked about it other than to the military psychologist. My job was to make sure that no one got to the students at the university. I was stationed there and was going to take them out if I had to, and an anti-sniper got me. My gunner ended up getting him. It hit me in the knee. That was the end of my military career. The bullet traveled from my knee up and around my pelvis bone and out the other ankle. It hurt very much. I instantly fell, and I was laying there. There was nothing I could do. And like I said, through the pictures of the family photo album, I think it would be my third great-grandfather. He was in the Civil War. My grandfather sat down and froze my leg right there. My leg was frozen, not cauterized, frozen, the whole wound, which is something no one's ever been able to explain. And he said, "Everything will be okay now, boy. Everything will be okay," and left. The medics were asking what we'd done, how we've done this, where did we get the ice? No one could understand. The psychologist told me that it was in the lust of battle that I'd lost a lot of blood and that I wasn't sure what was happening. But my spotter, who was also a sniper, he felt something cold as he was taking the other man out. He had shot before, so it wasn't the coldness you feel when you take a man out. It was completely different. I knew where I was. I knew where the bullet went out. I didn't know what the damages were. I was scared because I really thought that the pain that I was feeling. But at the same time, there was this great feeling of purity and just the joy of knowing I had a family member there. Grandfather Clock, World War II. The city of Aachen, formerly one of Germany's perimeter cities, was reduced to a pile of rubble by Allied forces during World War II. Our unit, the U.S. Army 33rd Medium Maintenance Company, happened to be passing through the city in 1945. The war was still underway, and as expected, the atmosphere was very hostile. Looking for a place of comparative safety to bunk down, we located two intact adjoining rooms in what had previously been an apartment complex. The only object of interest in these rooms was a grandfather clock, which was not running. Unable to resist a challenge of this type, we managed to make the clock operative. As the rooms were small, we decided that 6 would sleep in each room. Sleep we did, until the clock struck 2 a.m. I don't know what woke me, perhaps that clock. Within seconds, the wailing began, the most unearthly sound I've ever heard. The wailing continued for approximately 8 to 10 minutes, and then abruptly stopped. Silence prevailed, except the ticking of the clock. I positioned my rifle barrel in the direction of the door and held that position, anticipating the arrival of the sergeant of the guard. He was scheduled to wake up the relief guard at 4 a.m. Upon opening the door and directing his flashlight into the room, he was greeted by 6 gun barrels pointing in his direction. He checked the second room and found the same condition existed. All the occupants were awake and heard the wailing. Neither the guard on duty nor anyone outside those 2 rooms heard the wailing. It was never determined what the source of the wailing was, but it was determined prudent to sleep elsewhere.